before you say it doesn't make sense, and before you say that, well, the CX-90 is the one to get, do watch this video. I want to explain exactly why the CX-70 exists and who it's for. Because for some families, like mine, it actually makes more sense than the CX-90. Hello, my name is Jimmy. I'm a child passenger safety technician, and like I said, this is the Canadian spec 2024 Mazda CX-70 GT. So it doesn't have the, well, performance tuned motor like in the GTP here in Canada, or the Turbo S like you do in the US. I mean, at 280 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque, while yes, it's less than the 340 horsepower you get in the performance variant, this is, well, more than enough for a lot of people. And it's that sweet spot that I think most people will kind of gravitate towards, because the GT here, priced at 54,350 Canadian, which is $1,000 less than the CX-90, this second row bench, well, it just adds to a little bit more flexibility, because in the GT CX-90, you have to get it with captain seats. Now, I know some people love their captain seats, but for my family, there's only 3 of us. And when we do go out, sometimes we go out like with our parents, for example, and well, then it's 5 people. In a CX-90 with captain seats, we often have to send someone to the 3rd row. And if the CX-90, the 3rd row just isn't the biggest. And let's be honest, for a lot of 3rd rows, it's just not easy to get access to. It's not a van. And when you do send someone to the 3rd row, you lose half of that luggage space. But this, I can carry 5 people in pretty good comfort and have an extensive cargo area. And what's nice is this 40 cubic feet that's here, if you want to expand it, you actually can. The way that it's designed is so that when you fold down the second row seats, it's basically flat all the way across. However, if you take the entire bottom section out, which you can very easily without any tools, I'm sure you can make a platform that is flat to the bottom of the vehicle and have, well, just a bigger cargo area, if you, for whatever reason, want that. Or if you're carrying something bigger, like a barbecue or whatever, you can move the second row seats forward and still have, here myself, 5'11". I sit perfectly with that second row moved forward. And I mean, yeah, once I move it back, headroom, legroom is good. Even for the person that's in the middle seat, headroom, legroom is really not a problem here. And what's best is because it is a bench, you can fit 3 car seats across. Here I have the Clegg 5, a Flow, and a Link. 3 car seats across in the CX-70 with no problems. And that's not something you can do with a lot of CX-90s. So this is technically more family friendly in a way, because you can't really fit a lot of different types of car seats into the 3rd row of the CX-90. So that can vary, but I mean, it really depends on, you know, how big your family is, who you often carry and whatnot. But this makes sense. And the front seats are, I mean, really, basically everything up here, it's CX-90. You got the same seats. They're pretty comfortable. This being the GT version, I only got a 2-way lumbar support, which isn't the best, but they're fine. Heated steering wheel is pretty normal of Mazda. They have it just on the sides. You got all the buttons you would kind of need. And behind that, you get your split analog and digital cluster. I mean, it's perfectly legible, and I actually really like this cluster. I don't necessarily need that digital cluster that's on the top trims. It's just not all that necessary, because I do have a really good heads-up display that I generally would use more. One thing that is a little bit of a downside is, well, the main infotainment screen is a bit smaller. That itself doesn't concern me as much as the fact that, well, you can't use it with touch control. You have to use it with the knob in the center. I don't mind the knob, honestly. It works the way that I want it to, and it has all the directional controls that you would want. But the only thing is, when you're in CarPlay and Android Auto, it is more a touch screen experience than it is knob experience. And because of that, sometimes it just can get a little fussy. But when you're using any sort of voice assistant, that basically goes away. the interior is actually really nice overall. Sure, it's not as fancy as like the top trim, but here I actually don't mind it. This feels like, well, a top trim of some other auto manufacturers. It's really plush in here. It's really nice. Once you're on the road, you really feel exactly, well, what a Mazda feels like. It's so different than other manufacturers. I mean, I'm sure that's like a tagline in one of their brochures and whatnot, but it does feel different. It's much more immediate. It's much more connected than other brands. Steering is a little slower than some may be used to. Some have like quicker ratios, but because of the slower steering, the turn-in, it requires a little bit more effort. And because of that, it actually feels kind of nice. You feel, well, like you're doing a little bit more to get the vehicle to kind of turn. It's hard to exactly describe, but once you drive it, you'll understand. And it's just, well, less twitchy, especially on the open road like this. It's just a little bit more confidence inspiring. The powertrain, this 3.3 liter inline six has turbo power, it has mild hybrid power, and it's connected to an 8-speed and all-wheel drive. Power does get sent to the rear wheels first, then the front. However, most people won't be like able to feel that in kind of everyday driving or even when you're pushing it a little bit, because even with traction control off, stability control still kicks in and kind of takes over where you meet the limits of grip, let's say. The only kind of negative here is, well, this is a little bit of a clunkier transmission. If they took the ZF unit, it probably would be smoother, but listening to kind of their dialogues of, you know, why they went with the in-house is because they can package it how they want. They can program it how they want. And for Mazda, well, actually that makes sense. They're a company that wants to control that entire, well, vehicle. It's kind of like Apple in a way. And when you control the entire vehicle and all the parts that it comes from, you control the experience. And like I said, there's nothing really the same as Mazda. When you just take it for a drive, this feels special. It makes you just feel a little bit happier. I honestly love the CX-70. I know it's terms of like size-wise, like why did they make a CX-70 like the same size as a 90? Well, cost is a huge thing. Mazda's not a big automaker. They can't afford to really, well, stamp a smaller vehicle. I mean, they can, but the ROI just isn't there. If they make it like this with a larger trunk space, I don't think that's a negative at all. It doesn't change how the overall vehicle looks. Sure, the 70 and 90 has different bumpers, and the 70 is definitely more aggressive, and I like that. I actually really like the CX-70. I loved the CX-90 when I first drove it, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. I mean, the only thing I didn't really like was the captain seats, which this fixes. I know some of you would disagree, but if you do, let me know in the comment section why you disagree. Because here in Canada, this, like I said, is $1,000 less than the GT version of the CX-90. So it's less money, same size, same everything. Sure, technically speaking, as one less seat than the Signature model, because the Signature only has a 2-person third row seat. So this isn't really any less practical. But anyways, like I said, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.